wanted to come up with the projects. The wording is objective, but for me, I use the word project because I wanted them to have a end goal, like, you know, if I'm gonna purchase 5 computers, I want to see receipts for 5 computers. It is very, I'm gonna say we're basic. When you look at what each of the departments are requesting,
There is someone called and said that the city council is on each.
Let's take that.
It's fixed.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Mr.
It's okay, thank you, Steve.
I use the word for projects. You'll notice that a lot of what they're requesting is very basic. As we start working as a team to improve our budget and the long-term goals and objectives of what we ideally want to see as a whole, those basic needs will no longer be basic. If you look at each of the departments and what they're requesting as their goal for the year, their objective for the year, it is specifically computers. It is updated software. Travel and training was kind of my big push because we want to invest in our employees because we want them to invest in us. So for the first year, last year, we didn't actually put in this kind of a concept, even though it is in our policy. This year, I reached out to all of them and said, hey, I want to know what you want to accomplish. So they have to buy into this. They don't buy into this, it's just gonna become a love-hate relationship. And I really wanted the directors to be on board with, hey, I really want my department to move forward. I want them to be able to succeed in their top 3. And I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of them had more than 3. Some of them had like 20. A lot of them had a lot of community outreach and education. They actively want to get our community involved. I mean, 2 of the big, individuals are in this room today with Chief Lasoya and our building official, Andrew Bain. They want to bring the public in, they want them educated, they want them informed, they want them to participate, but they need the funds to do it. So
I
for
think that's a
them,
great idea.
that's a project, but for us, it's how more transparent and communicative can we be to our public. And so putting that in here helped for them. Some of the other things, I tried to kind of summarize the positions. So there is a current position budgeted and then what we're budgeting for the next fiscal year. It is a decrease. In evaluating the departments, I had directors last year tell me we need more positions, but then they never filled the positions. And after we realigned the goals of the department, the structure of the department, the accountability of the department, they realized, you know what, I really don't need more positions. I need to focus on what I have to move forward and
So
to
this-
improve.
That's on page 11.
Yes.
Correct.
So page 11 has a breakdown, the street department and utilities are the 2 that decreased. It's kind of pulling it back in. You can't keep adding more pieces to the puzzle if you're never gonna get the puzzle put together. And so reducing the number of positions does open up the room in the budget. So that is included in here. The big push, and we've talked about this, is the compensation. When I sat down and started working on compensation for the city as a whole, and using the different resources and tools that I have available that I'm aware of, a lot of our employees don't fit the bubble, which means there's not an increase in hourly rate here for 15. So the starting pay is still at $13.50.
And for council, that's on page 22.
It
Yes.
starts on page 11, we're talking about the compensation.
Okay, page 22, where you say 5%, which basically would work out to $14.18. For somebody making $13.50, correct?
About, yes. So, and I want the public and the council to understand, the 5% is a cost of living. That's a 5% increase, and we've all talked about the issues with inflation, we've all talked about, cost of living here. The 5% is across the board, everyone gets the 5%. But then there's the additional 5% that's added to the budget, but this isn't something we're handing the employees saying, here's another 5%. This is, we're giving you the 5% cost of living. Now we want you to invest in yourself and our community and earn the other 5%. So at any given point during the year, an employee gets a 10% raise altogether. And so this is really important. And in my steps, as step 1, we don't have our employees classified, so that's not. I have a worker one who's been here 6 years, who's about to become a supervisor. We don't put that structure in place very well. And so for this fiscal year, I look at it as, this is our step to invest in our employees and our employees to invest in us. If they want the 10%, they have to work towards it. And it's not a, well, I showed up to work, I get an extra 5%. No, all of the directors have been tasked with doing another growth plan. Last year, this fiscal year was the first year for a growth plan. Next fiscal year, there will be another growth plan, and it lists out their training, lists out what they want to see the employees succeed to do, and what we're gonna provide them. If we're gonna provide the cost of the material, if we're gonna send them to the training, they're gonna see that we're gonna invest in you. You take the opportunity, you get the certification, but then you also have that merit promotion thing. So during the next year, as part of our, what we talked about with the strategic plan, is truly understanding the classification and job descriptions of each of our employees. So we have generic worker 1, 2, and 3, and that works to a certain point, except for when you need a heavy equipment on. You know, you want it to be a bit more specific in your job description, because you don't want someone to apply and say, well, yeah, I can operate heavy equipment. I meet the minimum qualifications, but then the practical side is different. So we're trying to develop that, and all of the directors are already working towards that, and they understand. And it's also that pay scale. When I get hired, I want to know what am I eligible to pay. I don't want to be told, well, the salary range is $13.50 to $16, but you're going to be started off at $13.50, even though you have A, B, and C. Well, if I have A, B, and C, I should be able to start off at A, B, and C, but we don't have that structure in place that allows a director to sit there and say, okay, this is what I have. The budget does also include the longevity pay. It also includes the certification pay. So certain departments have certification pay, primarily the police department, the water department, wastewater, and streets. But it's all different across the board. Some it's an hourly increase, some it's what we call a differential, which means it doesn't touch their base pay, it's just an additional amount up to 2,080 hours a year. The idea is to redo that part of the employee manual to make it across the board. It makes it easier for one budgeting, makes it easier for payroll. Because if you have an employee who doesn't physically work, say they take some unpaid time off, well, then they don't get that differential as we have to reduce the hours. So it would be cleaner across the board, but also as an employee, I would be able to say, this is what I'm gonna make, you know, an hour. Not, this is my base pay, this is my differential, this is my overtime. They're all three. So that's one thing we're working on for the next year. I already mentioned the employees. Some of the other things is we're still looking at all of our recruiting. A lot of the cities have moved towards recruiting packets that kind of give everything that you get when you come to work. It's not just about the pay rate. It's what are your benefits, what you get, what is covered with your insurance, what is covered with your health, dental, vision, what is covered with your retirement. TMRS has even gone out and created a one-page flyer to entice people to join cities because, hey, your retirement's here. There's not this fear that we're going to lose it at any given point. I say yeah, never know. But also as far as your training opportunities. If I get hired, how do I move up? And that's all explained in these packets. So we've been looking into those as well. We did change our job posting, so it's no longer the job description. It's more of a flyer that's a little bit friendlier, kind of gives people a different view of what the city looks like. Health benefits, we're looking at a 5% increase, which is a significant deal for us because I was really fearful that it would be a lot higher. We are fully funded, so we don't pay claims, so we pay the premium. So this was a good secure by our partnerships. Workman's comp, all these little things that when you're putting the budget together, you have to kind of go over. Workman's comp, property coverage, or liability insurance, all of these, some of them have increased, and that's explained in here. Law enforcement liability has gone up 10%. Our automobile liability has gone up. We've been lucky. Our workman's comp didn't go up percentage wise, but it will reflect an increase because we're changing our salaries. So workman's comp is a percentage of what we pay our employees. So as long as we have the positions filled, we're gonna pay a little bit more. But if workman's comp's important, this is something that if someone gets hurt on the job, the city's not out of pocket for expenses to have them. Grants are always a big concern. We try to go after anything and everything that we can for the city so that we're not having to have the harder conversations with where the money can come from. One of the things in the budget this year, you'll notice under the water wastewater utility fund is that over $1 million is being used out of reserves. So it is the ARPA funds. We have to obligate all of that money by the quarter, which means we need to have something in place to show we're spent it or we're spending it. One of the big projects that we tried, of course, was the wastewater treatment plant. The next phase of it is clarifiers. There have been several issues with our clarifiers. They've been maintaining them to the best of their ability. We have the money, the clarifiers have to be fixed, but we can't do both, we can only do one. Estimated about $900,000. The other improvement that's listed in the budget is $250,000 to go towards the drying beds. This would bring them back to their original state. The drying beds have been altered over the years. They're also falling apart, which means we can't fully utilize them. There are barriers between the actual ground, how things are managed. That is included. This would obligate us to those tasks. The engineers would help us with the process to procure to get the bidder. Because I know that when we go out for this, we're not gonna get the project up and running in 1 day. It's gonna take some time, especially to find someone to come out to outline and who wants to do the project. When you look at the wastewater treatment plant evaluation, the first task was the aerators, which we completed this year. That project originated in 2020. So it's taken some time. So the 2 aerators have been replaced. There's now an automated bar screen that has been put in place. The evaluation has a ranking of what they feel as an engineer are the priorities. Based off of the conversations and the feedback from the actual team members that are out there, the clarifiers are concerned. So the idea is let's get one fixed, let's get the drying beds back to their original condition, and then still go out for grant funding. We can't just wait for the grant to come to us. We're gonna repair what we can with the funds we have available, and then we're gonna still go out for the grant funding to pick up the funds. But it is important to understand that that grant funding has to be obligated. So we want to make sure we get that locked into place so that down the road, it's not like, well, why didn't you spend it? You didn't need it, give it back.
So 2024.
So we have to have it obligated. So it is in the budget. But that doesn't mean from a budget perspective, if something fails or something positive happens and we get a fully funded grant, that we use it. The only way we use it is if we actually move forward with the project and don't have those other pieces. But it's in here because I don't want to not have that conversation with the team members, and I don't want to have the directors in here going, but we need it, why don't you ever budget it? We're budgeting, it's in there, we're moving forward. Only difference will be is if 1, we get fully funded somewhere else, or 2, we just can't make it happen. If we don't make it happen, we don't spend it. Prime example is this year. This year, we did not go out for paving because no one submitted an RFP, no one responded. But that money that we budgeted from the reserve to cover that project stays in the reserves. It's not going anywhere. We'll utilize it down the road for another paving project.
Before you move on, shout out to Marcy.
Is she on? She said she was gonna watch.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcy, for everything you do.
And she's staying on top of it, and it's hard because there's tons of grants out there, but it's, do we qualify, do we not qualify?
What's the match?
What's the match, but also, what's the time invested to actually apply for it? Some of these grants, with such a short deadline, kind of hard. It's getting all of that historical information easily available so that we can apply. And Mark's done an excellent job, bugging anyone and everyone who can come up with something to help us.
Marcy always steps up. All know. Thank you, Marcy.
Another item, just because you'll see a little bit of difference, is the fleet vehicles. The city is supposed to be rotating vehicles every 5 years as part of our lease agreement with Enterprise. So last year we didn't. We extended another year on our contracts that had already come to term. Only because there was the issue with actually being ordered and shipped to us, and the timing of it from a budget perspective just didn't work out. This year we have a new customer rep, and she provided a wealth of information. We are gonna switch out the 6 oldest leased vehicles. The important thing of this program is as we switch them out, the equity that we switch with it. So when we have those 6 vehicles come up, it also comes with that equity, which will lower our monthly payment. So we'll start to see newer and newer fleets, and the cost will slowly start to go down because we're building up that equity. This was really important in 2017, when we initiated this program, was because most of our vehicles were 10, 15, 20, I think some of them even 30 years old. They were falling apart. And this goes back to, I understand that the concept of the budget may be very basic right now with the basic needs of what departments want. But being able to get to A to B to do your job is important, and it's a basic need. And so we implemented this, and every year we try to grow the program. We haven't always been able to add new vehicles, but it's important that we focus on switching out the ones we do have so that we don't go back into that, well, we kept it 15 years and now, we'll start. The police department is adding a new vehicle to their fleet. They're going with the Ford Interceptors, which is like an SUV. There's a little bit more wear and tear on the vehicle, especially with those stop and go kind of traffic that they perform. But also they had a little bit of issues with some of the chargers that they flat out purchased. So we purchased used chargers from other cities, 160,000 miles. So we're starting to update their fleet as well and give them some newer vehicles. But also, if we expect our employees to go to training, it'd be nice for them to take a vehicle that we can represent the city at the training. There is one other exception in there. You'll see in the budget, the city manager's vehicle is being transferred to the building services.
Good deal.
Building services relinquished one of their trucks to allow for Heather Yaden to have a city vehicle to be able to run the equipment to install that. I personally, even though it is in the contract, I'm okay with using my own vehicle. I'm not worried about it. I would prefer that a department that's going to use it on a day-to-day basis out in the field, have that recognition from the public. It will have the city skills put on it and updated accordingly, but this will help them with, of course, not having to, who's going to take the vehicle today? The building official is currently using the chilling wall. So it helps them since they help the visitors.
Good move.
So some of the other things in the project or in the capital assets and what's outlined here is a lot of the smaller projects, because we're not doing paving this next year, we're gonna hold off and kind of get a better understanding of where we're at with it. We're gonna fill in a lot of the other smaller projects. And what's important to understand about the capital assets, if you look at our actual budget policy, it specifically says the capital asset is over 10,000. If you look at some of our capital assets themselves, they're 10,000. These are more kind of operating expenses, building maintenance, things that need to be completed. So we're gonna try and knock out as many of those as we can. Some of the big ones, of course, I have the wastewater treatment plant, just the next phase of the clarifiers and the drying beds. I've been working with ERSI on the GIS system. The capital improvement plan breakout for that one listed 250,000, I believe. Actually, after working with this vendor and having a conversation, the initial startup will be more expensive because they're going to help us transfer all of our shape files. Basically, I'm going to give them anything and everything we've ever received from an engineer, and they're going to put it into the system for us. And then they're going to help us start working through on how to update. We actually are scheduling a meeting to set up. One of our water operators is going to help with that because it's going to be part of the lead and copper. Utilizing the system, they have a program specifically that they can add on for free that will address the lead and copper, which it is outlined in here. we have a deadline of October 16th. And that's to provide inventory to TCQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Qualities, which is being mandated by the Environmental Protection Agency. So that one's really important. Of course, we all thought it would be much more, but they've been working with us, so that's here. Some of the other things you'll see is our layout plan. It was budgeted this year. Once again, it's money from reserves. Guess what? We didn't use it this year because it got pushed back a year. We're not gonna pull it from reserves, so it's gonna sit there in reserves. The visitor center is a big one, and if you looked at that budget, you'll notice that there's a significant increase. The budget is now over $1 million. This encompassed all of the COP committees, breakdown of information, what they wanted. But then it also includes another large chunk for repairs to the building. And so this would come out of our fund balance, which is, has been growing. But this also, we have money set up in the reserve, about 87,000. And the reason why this is important is this is supposed to be our focal point for visitors when they come out. If you currently go in that building, she has one of the windows wrapped in plastic because we have termites. The termites are being treated, but the damage that they've already done to that window and the wood around it has been fixed. She wanted to update more of this building, and this is an older building. This is, I believe, from the Marfa Air Base. She had wanted to do some updates this year. We postponed them in light of some of the other things going on. So for next fiscal year 24, there is a set of money from the reserves and fund balance specifically to cover the windows, the walls, the ceiling, and the roof. When you look at those projects, the first thing I thought was, well, can't you just do one, then do the other? But when we sat down and discussed it more in detail, there really was no point to do the ceiling and not the windows and walls. If you're gonna rip open the windows and walls and then do the ceiling, it kind of all went together. These are just estimates, would have to go out for an RFP for a contractor.
Is the porch too?
No, the porch is not included unless council wanted to come back.
What about the mural?
That is included. So they want to do a mural on one of the outsides of the wall. We have a huge mural population going on in Alpine and entice people. There's some really tricky ones where you can take pictures and be part of it. So they're just adding to that as well. But it's important as the focal point, we make sure we maintain the building. The last time this building was maintained was probably 20, 30 years ago, up until what we recently did. We really need to work on that. The gas department, of course, they would like to initiate phase 1 of automated meters, and our focal point being Fort Davis. So we have employees who go out to Fort Davis pretty much every day or every other day. This would kind of help them as far as being able to monitor really right then and there, because it would be a system where they have that information. They understand that, the cost of things has changed. They're gonna look at it from, do we do all residential first, and then do we do commercial, or do we do commercial, and then we do residential? But they're excited. They, wanted this in place for several years. And so we figured, let's just phase it out. Let's do phase 1 and see how it goes. See if it's something that, they can manage and it's easier for them, or if it makes it harder. They are looking into all of the positive aspects of going to a metered service with saving employee time, being able to monitor gas usage. And then hopefully at some point we get that portal for a customer who can go in and be like, oh, I must have left my gas on. Because they see that usage going up and down. Our capital improvement plan, when you look at the next 5 years, ideally, it will never match our budget as far as what we really have available. Because a lot of it really is it's kind of the wish list. It's the biggest thing on that for me, the capital improvement truly is that wastewater treatment plant. And that is a phased out program unless we have a windfall, a debt, bond going into place that could truly outline. For the most part, our CIP is going to be an item that really should be purchased within a year, unless it's over 50,000 based on our policy to have available. But we've been working through it. If you actually go through our CIP, there's a section of completed, and there's also postponed. Departments have sat down with me, like, you know what, right now, we really don't need that. You know what, we're good with what we have, we can wait a few years. And I think that's really important because, like I said, the departments have to be invested in this as well. It's not just a piece of paper, it's not just, you know, a document that they throw on the shelf, it's something that, hey, it's in my budget, I want to move forward with it, we really need it. And so when you look at that CIP, yes, it is for 2 million. And ideally, a budget 13 million over the next 5 years, it's not gonna happen. But over the next 5 years, as we continue to, you know, define exactly the direction we're going with the city, and you have that department input, and you have, you know, myself guiding and hopefully moving the direction we all want to go, you start to see some of these items will be knocked off because they're no longer needed, or you know what? We're gonna take a different direction, we want to be a big project. We don't want to just replace one piece of the pie, we want to do the whole pie. So the CIP, it's definitely changed over the past several years. We've gone from a basic spreadsheet formula to an actual visual document. When you look at the CIP pages, it breaks down a lot more information, but this is going back and understanding. When I ask, well, what does it cost to run that tractor? A lot of people aren't gonna be able to answer that because it's not a mechanism we kept in place. We've never actually tried to figure out, well, what does it cost? Because when we've kept something for 40 years, well, it hasn't cost very much because we kept it. But as we still build up the city and we improve not only our departments, but even the tools and resources we have, you'll start to see more and more changes with that. The big thing that I know a lot of people ask about, of course, is the reserves and the fund balance. Fund balance is the term used for the general fund. That position is used for the enterprise. For this upcoming fiscal year, we are using reserves and fund balance in the positions for the utilities for wastewater, like I mentioned. The airport specifically for improvements to the facility and for the match for the tech aviation, and then tourism. Tourism is unique because it can only be used for tourism things. It's very structured by the state. And so the state says you can only use it for certain things, which means, yes, they have a healthy fund balance, but that doesn't mean we can't use it to go to something else because we can't. We have to specifically use it for tourism things. They have done very well over the past several years. I know when you look at the history of the city, you think, well, the pandemic hurt so many people. We really were lucky. We worked with hotels, we worked with the public, so hotels still operated, not to the level that they wanted, but they still brought something in and the city benefited from that. So as a result, part of it is being used to work on that local book, to work on that visitor center. I know that last week, the tourism, they sat down and they did their cuts and what are we gonna approve and who gets what, and you know, it's always interesting to watch when you have a bucket of money, who it goes to, why it goes to it, is it, you know, broken evenly. At any given point during the fiscal year, if the council ever wanted to go back and give them a bit more or amend what was being done, it is possible and fund balance can be used. Or if all of a sudden our revenue part exceeds what we budgeted, then that extra revenue can go towards an additional project or event. The idea of the hot committee is to basically start the discussions, to break it down, to provide a little bit to anyone and everyone who qualifies. They still have to follow the city structure. We don't just give them money. By no means do we just cut them a check and say good luck. But we have that discussion and the committee makes their decisions. The council always has opportunity to go back. And Chris has done that. Chris Ruscia has come back to council and said, hey, can we give Solas Rodeo some money? And council makes that decision. So I know that this year there was so much, and it's on the agenda for tonight, that there were so many event projects or historical restoration, so many things that were asked for. And you know, from Chris's, this is your limit, Chris, this is what you get. He takes that and he allocates it and they break it down to that. that's the best way to start the process. Otherwise, you may end up every year with millions in supplies. $1 million. So they've broken it down. We are using the reserve for the building itself for the visitor center, but at that any given point, council will come back during the next fiscal year that you have. You can do it this fiscal year too. If for some reason, you know, a new event came up or Chris wanted to take from more money or have a conversation, it's available. One thing Chris does do an awesome job at is he monitors what the events are using. And if an event backs out, if an event comes in and says, hey, I'm not gonna hold my event this year, then he may reallocate some of that to another organization or event that looks forward.
Megan, why can't hot funds be used to fix a visitor center?
They are being used.
They are?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, there are no property tax or general fund or anything like that are being used.
Thank you. Yes.
Although it is a city-owned building.
Yes. Well, it has to be owned by somebody.
I hope yes.
The next several things that are in the budget discuss all of the department requests. I try to accommodate at least 2 to 3 of every request that they had. It is only possible under the general fund, so we aren't going out for paving. I think that is probably one of the wisest moves the council has made in regards to having a full-blown discussion on, do we want to always request a third-party vendor? Or do we really want to develop a team and work towards paving ourselves? Paving ourselves may take a little bit longer, but then you're not waiting. You're not waiting for that third party to submit an RFP to meet the purchasing requirements, the deadlines, the contracts, and really understand. We had that street survey done that told us good and bad. But to sit down as a council and I'm willing, I will rent a bus and we'll take a tour on a Saturday and we'll drive every block in Alpine to really see what needs to be fixed, because it's important. I know Mr. Stevens asked all of y'all to look at your stop signs, so speed limits, that's all right. And to evaluate, but it's the same thing with the streets.
It's the same thing you gave us to ask council to go drive the streets.
Yes.
Rate
To
them.
look at those, the worst ones that Eddie had proposed.
Yes.
So
I remember
Eddie-
sending that in to you.
Yes, Eddie does a great job and then he'll go through and give you his top 10 worst streets. We took that, we ran with it and we did 2 RFPs. That's the lowest.
See, that's the other thing. I'm not getting responses for pay.
So taking a year, and it's hard because this is one of those priorities that are on the list with the public is, I want my street fixed. I mean, I want the pothole fixed. I want the water department came and cut up my road. I want you to fix it. And I truly understand that. I live it. I live on one of the worst streets in Alpine, and I hate it because my neighbors hate me. And you know, it's like, when are you gonna fix it? When are you gonna fix it? But I think to truly plan for the future and to understand what we need to pay, it's not just that we're gonna pay this, we're gonna pay that. It's okay. These are our top 20 rough streets. These are our next 20. Fiscal year 1, we're doing this. Fiscal year 2, we're doing this.
So any business, translate this line here, Scott says, our area. What do they all have?
I think it's a combination.
We're doing it. What's not this?
And they're willing to come show us how to do it.
That's even better.
Actually, there are some roads that need to be hot paved most times. Right. Cost of hot paving is 2 or 3 times. I don't know, no, so.
It's a material layer.
You know, road base, so they come in, they dig out the road base and want to hot pave. Or you seal it. The question is, cost. High traffic areas, low traffic areas, just.
Either
Either
one of
one,
those would be in-house or.
either one can be in-house or outside. We just got some strategies. We don't have a strategy.
That's why I really like the idea when council at the last meeting said, you know what, the state. Because for the next year, it's really gonna be continuing the strategy of what do we want, and I agree, cold play is gonna be a lot cheaper than hot. Hot mix is very temperamental because it has to be maintained at certain temperatures, and then you're very dependent on delivery as well. Eddie does both. We try to do the third party to do some of that hot mix. He does a lot of the cold, or he does what he calls a hot cold play. So it gets delivered cold, he heats it up and he lives it. There are so many different methods, but we're not consistent. Some streets are done one way, some are done the other. Having this next year to really understand, and then I want the public, if the public comes in and, hey, when's my street? Hey, this is fiscal year 1, fiscal year 2, fiscal year 3. And unless there's a major utility issue, then there shouldn't be an alteration. But this also gives us another year to work with our utility department, because we've historically not worked together. It's been unfortunate, it just hasn't worked out the way we've all wanted it to. We pave a road and utilities comes and cuts it up.
That's it.
Dang utilities.
That's right.
That's why I brought
It's a decision of whether we do one or the other.
So I think we need a workshop. I would dare say most of this council don't know anything about how rural.
And I'm telling you, I will. bring the-
We got our experts right there.
Maybe, so for example, my driveway, I have a driveway that's twice as long as most city blocks. Or I use a lot of hot tape, everything else just, it works. It's a cost management issue. I have to get educated and decide. What are the ones we got hot tape, because we're lots of school buses now, all sorts of things. Trash trucks, issues.
And I think taking a Saturday has to be a hands-on workshop, because you really need to see. Will there be done? I will get you lunch.
I'll show up.
Maybe I'll do lunch.
Not just-
Want to go?
not just for lunch, just to see how it's done.
Be our one break too.
You know, to me, as a citizen, I would love to have that kind of, our streets department to have that kind of knowledge. To be able to, oh, that's broken, let's go fix it, boom. You know, and instead of waiting to put out RFPs and things like that, I would rather bolster the street department. And I'd even pay a little bit more for that taxes, but, because they do a hard job.
They do, and this goes back to the, how do we accomplish so much with so little or within a certain time period? Because, you know, we all want a deadline. For me, my first and my priority, and I've said this before, is you've got to have the employees engaged.
Yes.
If they're not gonna be engaged and they're not gonna be invested, it doesn't matter if we go get the equipment and the material to pay, they're not gonna want. They're gonna take their time, they're gonna call in sick, because they're not.
Yeah.
But it's because we want to rebuild that culture, and I want a team, I wanted where if at any given point, Adelina can call and say, hey, I need help with the tire projects, and you have the water department, the gas department. the
Which is a
finance
true story.
department.
We did.
You have
It
all
was
of those
awesome.
teams. I mean, it's hard to think sometimes because we all do operate independently. So for me, my biggest priority has been to redevelop the culture of the city employees so that they want to actually, they want to apply. It's not a paycheck to them. They actually want to do it, which is why you see that huge raise in this budget. But then we have this next year to be okay. We'll take a Saturday, I'll buy you guys lunch and we'll go and we'll see all the roads. I can tell you right now, when we get audited, I have to physically show them, we get in my truck and we drive so they can see where all that money went. And they can tell, they'll tell you, oh, that's paid. I mean, you can physically see it. And then they'll be like, well, how do we know? And it's like the conversation, you know, hey, you can tell the difference. You don't see any potholes, you don't see, except for one shoot, the water department does.
But that's where the impact.
Always.
I blame the gas too, but they're much quieter. about it. You know, they're not crazy. But so that's a big part of this is, so the next, like I said, the next few pages it goes over all of the departments.
Basically, what
Their
their
objectives.
projects, their objectives.
So it's
So for Alpine Police Department, their objective, community oriented policing and training and travel. Correct?
So every time we start, so when we get back into our updates by our departments, instead of me doing it on their behalf, Daryl's gonna stand up there, he's gonna do what he has done. He's gonna tell you everything he's accomplished with the community, he's gonna show you everyone who's trained. We have employees, I call them training styles, because they really want to learn and keep informed of how to do their job. And Daryl could stand up and say, this month we had 80 hours of training and these are the people who do the certification. The same with the water department. if we don't have a utility director, and Andrew, the one still standing up there, he's gonna tell you, you know what? Aaron Lotta just got his due. Congratulations. Cassandra just got her. It's gonna have it where you see what we're doing. All of the budgets pretty much show that significant increase in training. Gio will be our first certified city secretary. And that's in the budget. But we've had the conversation. It's an objective for this department because we want to start off with the basics. As we continue to develop this budget, your objectives are significantly going to change. You're going to start seeing the actual number of hours for things. How many, want to look at the city secretary, how many public information requests, you break it down even more narrow. But I don't want to do that because it's not fair to our departments who don't have the basics. I want Jennifer to give me a detailed itemized list of her animals every month with how many are in and out, how many adopted. She has to do it through Excel. She's got no software.
Right.
That's a recurring theme throughout the city.
And so those are all in here. Are they to the level we want? No. But it doesn't mean that for the next year, we don't try to move to that, position. When we're gonna get an ERP out, we're gonna get new software in 24, 25, we're gonna budget for a new thing. Because right now I can find software under $50.
You can or can't.
Oh, I can. I don't know if it will work.
That's what it's like,
And what kind of
I don't think it does a whole lot.
Right.
So Marcy, and I know she's on, Marcy's been helping me and she's frustrated with me. I can tell you this now. But she goes, "Send me the email, just tell me what you want." It's hard to tell someone what we want when we don't know what we think. Like, I would love a software that I don't have to print to PDF and then export to Excel. It doesn't always happen. So for me, it's like, how about a software that automatically exports to Excel? Well, that's basic for her. She's like, oh. But for me, it's like, no, you understand. Darren's comment a few meetings back with, were you gonna pull the rug out? Or are you gonna try to implement it phase by phase? Maybe we do have to get building services set up, help PE out, help the environmental services, how about animal control before we pull the rug out for utility. Because those are your two tools. Those are the two that are gonna be the hardest. And I'm not saying hardest as in actual training and learning. It's the hardest because bad data in is bad data out. So when we transfer everything in, we want to make sure it's clean. And we know that we have a problem, but be very open to the utilities. So every department is in here. Some of them are actual capital asset kind of programs, what their objective is, they want to complete. These all have a very matrix type outcome. I can put them in a spreadsheet and I can mark them off as completed or not completed. I can put timeframes to them. And all of the departments understand that. They know that if I ask for training and travel, maybe someone want to know, okay, what training and travel are we doing? What did you do this week? How many employees have gone through with it? In the years past, it was kind of, you're gonna do 40 hours a year. Well, telling me to do 40 hours a year, I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna go to one conference because I'll get 40 hours. But it may not be a conference that actually helps with anything. So we left it a little open so that as we're developing each of the positions, the job descriptions, the roles of our employees, that we kind of think, what do we want them to learn? I've already made it clear to all of our directors that next year, my focus is on them and professional growth. We know that they know their jobs, but I want them to professionally grow. There are classes that, don't pertain to pay. I'd love for everyone to take emotional intelligence. It's a free class. You just have to sign up for it, or I'll sign them up for it. Going further into it, there is a projected multi-year end trend. When I look at the trend, I am not happy with the trend. It is very conservative and it's not really in a format that I honestly would further like to develop. I've been very blessed with having a network of other finance and city managers that have softwares that kind of help them with this type of thing. When I look at the projected next 3 years, I once again took conservative. 3% revenue, 5% expenses. The reason why I look at it from a very conservative is when you look at revenues, the revenues are dependent on council. And so council has to understand that when I project, I'm projecting on whether or not you're gonna raise taxes. There are softwares available that allow you to take it down several notches where you can go into those weeds. And you can look at appraised values compared to what is actually collected for property tax compared to what you think your next 5 years will increase. Because our trend has been flat with very minimal up and down, to project the next 3 to 5 years is really hard. When you look at a trend, it is all basically an opinion. It's a professional opinion on how I predict the city moving forward. I do see that we are not going to sustain our revenues over our expenses. And the reason for that is because we've spent years trying to make up for the bad management prior to everyone in the room. And so we had to make those cuts, and we did. We lived within our means or our budget, and we lived below it a lot of times. But that meant we didn't pay for 2 years at that time. That meant that these capital improvements and building maintenance didn't happen. We utilized what we had so that we can make a payroll cuts. And bottom line, that's what it came down to. But as we continue and we go year to year to year, this will break down. What you're seeing here is a very basic summary and forecast of the next 3 years. What I love in utilizing other city software is the breakdown of what is our property cost. What is our actual employee? Like you'll see here is basically broken down based on our departments. But to truly understand, what is the projection of our employees? Employees are your number one capital. And you want that pulled out separately. You want to be able to analyze what does our employees look like and how are we growing? We reduced positions this year. But that doesn't mean that as we grow and we develop our employees and we encourage people to work here, that it's going to significantly change. I don't know if that means that administration is going to change. I don't know if that means the police department is going to change. I'd like to know as an employee as a whole. So there are a lot more options to go for training. I keep it very basic for the time being. This is the second year we've done it.
And we've only done this projection for 2 years. It seems like you need a crystal ball.
You do. So you use historical.
Because you don't know when there's gonna be a pandemic or God forbid a war or something that causes crisis. You have to,
COVID,
you just
that's
don't
all we
know.
know, right?
COVID part 2.
So when you look at this trend, there are a lot of variables that you can plug in. You can plug in employee growth. You can plug in specifically revenue increase percentage for property tax. What do you project the next 5 years to look like? You can break it down one step further and you can actually look at appraised values, which we know are really hard right now for the city and the county because they're kind of doing this bit. You can break it down further and you can have an economic factor where you actually look at the economy as a whole. You can add the unemployment rate, you can add inflation. You have I have a wealth of availability to look at this and change the numbers and predict how I see it based off of historical data. Well, historically, you know, we're pretty, you're looking at a 3 to 8% up and down at the given point. We've not gone out for debt. We've not gone out for, which has been great because that's allowed us to build up our reserves. But at the same time, part of our reserves, we're not in that position. We have to spend it. And so that's part of the budget. I'm showing you where it's coming and where it's going to come out. Over time, like I said, my big thing is I'd like to have this trend broken down so that it is clear and kind of see more of the underlying parts of it. It is a crystal ball. It is taking the historical and then predicting the future. I can't predict in the future if we have another. I can't predict that all of a sudden we have a natural disaster and we're done. And we were not going to recover. But I can predict that we're going to continue to operate at a certain pace. Because guess what? The city manager, the director of finance, and the council can top that. You can cut it off.
You think so still after September 1st?
Hmm?
You think you can still predict after September 1st? the state decides to stick its fingers in your pie?
Oh, yeah, because then I'm just gonna put zeros next to everything.
She'll ask her 8 months.
We don't have to.
But this is the prediction, is I know that the state has now significantly put an impact on the city. We now have a city attorney that I can reach out to, and I can sit there and say, all of these things we charged are now gone. That tells me that I'm gonna be reducing my revenue, which tells me you're not getting your cameras for legal. This is not a stone. This is a living document that changes. So if at some point I have to go and say, I'm sorry, Daryl, gotta make a cut. You know, and this is why, but this is the key to this whole thing, it's the why. It's sitting there telling, I'm sorry, you know, our revenues are being reduced because we don't have the same level of fees that we used to. All of a sudden, we went into a recession or the magical recession that is yet to happen. We can't do something we wanted. We couldn't get that piece of
It's right there with you.
but this is why. We're not telling you no. We're saying
just
we
no.
have to make a cut and actively involving our community, but also our employees. I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm gonna call you out because you're sitting there, but Aaron's like, I want that backhoe, I want that trencher, I want that piece of equipment, they won't help me do my job. He doesn't know the other part, he doesn't know that, you know what, we're not bringing in the revenue, people aren't paying their water bills, we can't do it right now. Let me go to council and ask them if they're willing to do better. But you know what his compromise was, that team's compromise, they didn't want a backup. They were okay with something different. They wanted to walk behind Trencher because they had the opportunity to do the other departments. And they found out, hey, this actually makes it a little easier. And then they compromised one step further, and we found one on the buy board that is used, and they're like, no, let's do it. At a much significant less cost. For them to have a tool to figure it out. Now, it's his responsibility to make sure.
There you go, Aaron. We count on you.
But it's something to add. So when I look at the trend, and I do indicate in here, there are a lot of factors on the trend. There are,
Right.
it's not just,
We did.
and like I said, what you're being provided is very basic. What I ultimately have been working on is another software that allows me to do a better job. You have as part of the trend things that come up, including the constant improvements. So that trend should always reflect a definite capital investment. You'll notice that there have been items added for capital improvement reserves for when we need to use those, but we don't always budget those. We're starting to budget those because we have projects that need to be completed, but we don't have that guarantee or the revenues that will come from. The reserves are designed to help the city. We don't have a rainy day fund, but they are designed to help the city if the city was to ever come to a standstill. We wanted at least 180 days to keep operating, to be able to pay our employees. But the council has also, for the past 10 years, dedicated for specific projects. And so I'm the bad finance director who, when you allocated money for a specific project, if I didn't have to pull from reserve, I didn't. If it came out of operating because something else fell under, I left it operating. I didn't pull it from reserves. Council obligated money for reserves for multiple things, but we never had to pull the actual money out. We had the availability of operating. Which means our reserves have continued to grow. But at some point, you have to use them. ARPA has to. You can't sit on it. It's not in
2024.
And a lot of what we put aside has been dedicated. When the FEMA grant comes through, because we're still in the funding, that's money that is in reserves specifically for the new generators, for the well fields, that will get budgeted. You'll see it come out and you'll see it be an actual expense. Because that's what you did, you put the money aside. Now, doesn't mean we need to use it all. By no means do we want to go through and utilize everything in 1 year, because we're not. We're using what is required right now that the city already obligated themselves to. And that's what's really important. By no means do I want every year to have the conversation with, well, we're using reserves, we're using reserves. Because at some point, we're gonna get all those basics taken care of and we're not using reserves. Now, the general fund is balanced without reserves, but a lot of the bigger projects aren't included. There's not the big capital equipment expenditures. There's not the big capital projects. a lot of what is being done with what we would have had for paving. Hey, only asked for 150,000 guys for silver. There's 300,000. Because I want them to have that extra, hey, you can then have, we can do some more. But it's the training, it's the travel, it's the employee salaries. The employee salaries hit the hardest in the general fund because we don't have the same revenue sources as the other funds. And so you'll see, that's the big expense there. The police department, they have to keep up and maintain their equipment because that's a lawsuit. I don't ever want to take the courthouse. So for them to improve their equipment, and I know it's like, why would you get on teasers? It's the lethal force.
Yes.
I keep telling them it's like the non-lethal, but they go out of date. They have to be, kept up, and there's a program that Daryl found that is included in here. Their software, we signed a contract, it does go up every year, that's included in here, the vehicle are included in here. But at the same time, it's the salaries. Those positions are in here, we're being competitive, not only with those around us, but we want to entice others from Midland, Odessa. Instead of our employees going there, let's bring them back here. Some of the other big things, and this one you guys can shoot me, but I am a strong supporter of the library. There is a $5,000.
Good.
It is a big thing for me. I grew up in the library. I'm a book nerd that goes to the library. But it doesn't mean council has to approve it, guys. I just put it in there. There is the family crisis in there at the same level, because we have had that opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with them. Their contract has expired. So that's also included. Trying to give a little odds and ends and everything that's in here. What else is included?
So maybe we're got just past an hour. You wanna tell us the two most important things and make up to have a discussion.
For me, the two biggest things are employees.
Our employees, but
Employees, that's one of the biggest needs, and the other is to provide a place.
anything else that you feel like we need to know, start talking.
There's so much here.
I know, believe me,
And this isn't even like,
it's my Sunday afternoon reading.
this isn't even
My
where
body
I
was
want to
excited.
like it all. Every year.
All right, council.
Take a break.
Yes, we can. Need a cookie? That girl, yeah, we need to try the cookie. Yes, and there are some cookies over there.
Hard. I told her, you need to know her,
Nice sort of.
just in case somebody wanted to help them. Yeah, you know, I was all over. You know, someone learns on a road out of state. Oh, boy.
As opposed to.
Oh, you have my 73 Monte Carlo.
Well, so.
I now can see your face.
Individual. I tried. For the last 2 years. I don't know what it is.
What does it mean when his eyes go off? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know what to do.
Okay, we're ready. Yeah, okay. So, you know, we're working on trying to honor everybody's time. So I wanted to give you this quote that our city secretary had when he did a webinar. He passed it my way. And it says, even though long meetings are often accepted as the norm, we need to acknowledge that drawn out meetings are bad public policy. So in that vein, let's continue. All right, so city manager, last thoughts. Kind of sounds like you're going for execution. Any last words? Okay, all right, so it's opened up to council, just go around, Councilman Stokes, do you have any thoughts?
Everybody knows I'm not good. If I took this, added every number, none of it would come up. It's okay. I didn't run and tell everybody to go out. I do know that for the past 2 years, Megan's handed us stuff, and it was beautiful. It worked out. We got audited. We're not in prison. Everything was wonderful. So I totally trust Megan that if she says these 150 pages for what's good for Alpine, it's what's good for Alpine. Believe it or not, I did scroll through here. I have actually looked at some of this stuff. And I think it's good. I like the whole format. For me, the layperson is more understanding. I don't know all the ins and outs of all these big numbers. I just don't. I'm not gonna tell you all I do. That's what Megan's for. But I do think that by not doing outsourcing that paving, it's gonna give us breathing room to be able to figure out what we're gonna do. We need a plan. I think it needs to be an in-house plan. That's my opinion. I think we need to pay somebody $2 million to do our roads. Let's play our guys do. It's my opinion. So I like it. If we can approve it right now.
Well, this time on October, November, sorry, school. To go out.
Have a field trip.
I'm ready to get Kitty go. She loves it. Okay, thanks.
And thank you for keeping us out of prison. Yes, we were on the show, we couldn't go to jail.
It's me having the prison.
That's what I mean.
But I was like, can also. All right, Councilmember Nance.
Generally, just the, I'll talk to Megan about it, because other questions I had on, like. The 29% what we're going up on HOT year over year, and those revenues, just to see kind of like where we get those numbers, 700,000 to, go over million, just to see how those created. Just appreciate it, communication happened, city leadership, podcast, or really format.
All right, Councilmember Sandate.
On the paving, that includes contract paving or contract paving?
There's no contract. 300,000 that any wants. But that doesn't mean that we can't do what we did this year, come back and say, hey, reduce my silt coating, I really need to be done by a third party. So that is available, just we'll have the large pot like we had this year.
That's important to remember about the budget. It's fluid and dynamic, and it's all what's happening. It can change, just like your personal budget. Storm comes along, knocks your roof off, all of a sudden, You've got, you
You
know,
lose your car
Yeah.
AC.
yeah, car AC, okay. Councilmember Stevens.
So I'm on the other end of the scale.
Okay.
I expect, I have a ton of questions. I don't know the best way. Six.
We have 15 minutes. Yeah, yeah, but there's more opportunities for us to discuss, so whatever you don't get through.
Good, anywhere from the ticket tax, so let me start with big stuff, and I'll get down to the small stuff. You made a comment that our budget policy says our capital plan should only have costs of $50,000. You know, we have a ton of stuff in capital. It's less than 50,000. Why is that? Why wouldn't we just roll that into the expenses as opposed to putting in a capital in our policies?
So historically, we had it laid out that way. I've started. For me to take that and roll it into our operating would be a huge impact on our departments because they would decide. So if we were to make a budget cut this year, we were to cut one of those under 50,000 items, they would see that it's never been. So as we keep developing that CIP, we'll start moving those out and they won't, none will be added. to it. So for me, it's working with the department. They have a very clear visibility. I had a director come in this morning saying, "Look, this has been on there for 5 years." And so they know what's on there. So for me, it's doing that slow shift to put it into our operating, but also keeping it very visual so that we don't forget that it's ever.
So I got that. So my next question is related. How do we know what in the cap? $2.6 billion. Capital improvement is $2.6 million in for 23-24. I don't believe $2.6 million is included in that budget.
Not all of it is included in the budget. So on page 13, there's a list of the capital assets that are included in the budget. So like the GIS CIP is listed at 250, but I have it in the budget.
So I struggle. I'll just say, I will vote against the capital. How I can talk. 6 months. I don't know what it's actually.
So what you're saying is on page 13 where it says tasers, animal shelter repair, employee lounge area, that's what's in the budget. Yep. So it lists it on page 13.
Those
Under
are all
capital.
the items that are capital improvement plan that are actually.
So how much does that add up to?
You want to.
It would be helpful.
It's not gonna match the 2 because we found out it's less. And the wastewater treatment plant is set to 5.6, but we're only doing a portion of the one.
So I understand that a budget, while it's not cast in kind, it's all about what is it? $6 billion. Yeah. The reason I asked that, not because I'm really interested. I want us. Hey, out of the capital improvement, $2.6 million. You've included the budget. There might be another 1.6 that we as council may say, oh, this is really important. We have to deliberate about whether that should go in or not, without having that insight. Okay, so that's the reason I asked.
Okay, so let me clarify. So do we need a total for how much the tasers, animal shelter repair, employee lounge area?
Added up, yeah.
Yeah, so just a total. for
Added
that.
the 2.6.
Yeah, I'll add one line to the second capital improvement plan. And then reflect the.
That would be helpful, so we get a good sense of it. The summary for the general fund, so I make this. Summary of the general fund. What is not listed What are reserves? I couldn't find that. What did I find? Here's how much we have been, use the term, we have fund balance for one group, we have a different term for the. What I'm interested in is how much is, how much of that is already allocated?
So after every, so basically the third page from the title page, like page 20, page 26 is the general fund, then you have a breakdown of comparison, and then you actually have the estimated fund balance. And you have the estimated,
And that's on page 28.
and every one has one. So there's one after airport, there's one after hot, there's one after water, there's one after gas.
So take it in one page right now. You could take it
20.
down. 28. It says beginning fund balance, $2.9 million. Is any of that money committed?
So you'll notice if you go down, it says have restricted, committed, or other, 710,755.
So that says there's $2 million.
So that will, the estimated, Yeah.
2.3 uncommitted. So estimated total fund balance, it says 2.9, what's going to be 2.2 and 2.9?
that's the 11,000.
Yeah, the unassigned fund balance is 2.3. The top it says begin at 2.3, but there's $1,000 cost and all that. If I look then at this page, which is the general fund, this would say the city has $2.2 million that is completely uncommitted and unassigned. So that is potentially allocatable to building cities. So and that is for general fund. If the other,
The water is 47.
so page 46, 47 is water.
You're beginning that position with 12.5 million.
5 million is projected revenue, net investment. And so unrestricted in water is $2.8 million. That's available to do whatever makes sense.
That's available, that's not.
So that's what's available this time. So it gave a new term reserve. So it would really be nice to have a sheet that shows all of the fund balance net positions that's on. Make sense?
It's a little summary sheet we can go to see.
Because then again, council's responsibility is to worry about where should we be allocating critical resources to meet city needs. Because we have a lot. We already know that there's a whole bunch of things in the capital improvement plan that we're not buying. Blades, which was going to be, that's $36,000 to buy a road scraper, which Eddie would need in order to go do his own payment. Understanding that will help us council say, we're going to be money available for use. So now we go back to reserve. This document says there was no reserve. This budget would be extinguished. We have a reserve separate from the fund balances
For which one?
for any fund.
So the city council,
The alpha policy a number of years ago
Yeah.
after.
we used all that.
Okay,
So
so,
what was allocated into the reserve filled out for that $2 million?
okay, so where were we? So there was a zero reserve. Our finance policy says we're supposed to create a reserve. Doing that. So my mind, it's for discussion for council to have. Reserve.
So the policy also indicates that in February is when this will take place. So in February, I would say 24th, the conversation would be at where are we at with our revenues, where are we at with our expenses?
Yep.
And is there a difference to it? I can tell you, I moved 500,000 out of our general fund checking account into reserves because we had too much money. Ideally, I can tell you, we have 500,000 in general fund reserves. That's not obligated to anything, but it's technically part of it. The fund balance can be moved to create reserve as well. We just never moved, just never touched.
I got it, it's a policy issue, we have to decide. We need to change our policy, we have to change it.
Probably do, because I think you really need to look at it not from a 1, 2, 3, 4 year. You need to look at it every year.
That-
And you need to look at it from, okay, like for me right now, if you guys raise taxes, that money, because it's not part of budgeting or balancing the budget, goes in.
Yeah, so we're in alignment, I'm looking to see at a top level. So that people can understand, we have a general fund, we have enterprise funds, we have fund balances, we have reserves. I think that would be really helpful, people would say, oh. We have flexibility, we have challenges, here's our. And I look at the wastewater treatment plant, okay, huge issues. I think part of the discussion that we council is, where should we allocate some of our fund balance at a greater level to go get that fixed at a faster rate? My mind, that's a council debate. But about it, what to say what are our options. I think the other thing is, the city, if I just look at these top level numbers, financially, the city's in pretty good shape. Okay, so that's great news. We'll be able to talk about that. Makes sense. So getting that sheet put together, in my mind.
Okay, so let me recap. So we need a sheet that shows what money is unencumbered. We need to look at our reserve policy to see if we as council want to rework that. And then maybe we also need to look at our capital improvement plan policy to see if we want to lower that dollar amount.
We have.
Well, where was the, it can't be, okay, so maybe we need to look at that too. All right, is that what I'm hearing? And then we need the sheet that shows what money, oh, we already said. So, okay.
So you do need a capital. Because you need to actually outline how we're disposing of assets, how we're gonna. There's a lot more to it and I haven't.
Yeah, add that to our growing list for October, November, December, January. Yes.
Okay, next, employees. So I'm not in alignment with the current funding of funds like that. I thought we walked out and what I understood. Successful. What is current?
I have to go back last time I was at it. Well, I was there from the national. That's probably.
It's 40%, so we have a target, we have to. It's kind of talking about salaries, what was. Cost $50 an hour. I would have thought, budget recommended said. Our plan is to immediately move all employees to $50 an hour. And. Increase. Employees, make sure that we follow our percentage.
And the compression.
And I get compression as an issue, so I fully understand that. Part of my concern though is if we don't retain employees that are spending have time, effort, and money getting on board, then they're gonna look and say, we're going somewhere else. You, I, we've been doing this now. Lost the council 7 years before them, and the year eight, basically, and 2 years off the budget. Always. I'll also tell you, as a She did a great job laying that out. So, what would it be? What's the impact? And, you know, leadership training, say, here's what you do, we want employees to stick around.
So the reason why I didn't take that direction was because
Get it, get it.
and going back through and looking, like I said, worker one. They've been in this for so long. The idea was 5% addresses some of the information, some of the issues we have, but then the 5% is how many employees. They can easily go from $13, $15, $15 an hour, no problem. But then we take the next 12 months to actually develop a $15 starting pay, a actual pay scale sub ladder, so that when employees we could hire, they're not dependent on a supervisor to tell them they can see it. It's physically there, but I didn't want to not include something. It's a 5%, but the employees have to.
I understand, and I applaud the efforts that I'm going to go. What's missing is my standpoint, is understanding the plan. Because if there's no plan here, I don't know how to pull this. With words, I'm an outlet city. 5% of the top of that gets me to,
14,
Yeah.
calculated it out,
well,
14, 17 or something like that.
yeah, there's 5% of 50, yeah.
What is it, Aaron? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
There's like 1468.
Well, 1468, you
Yeah.
get all 10%. You only get 5%, now you're on the low 14s. Okay, and I'm not sticking around. I'm gonna go next door. Some other, and we'd rather have them stay.
Well, we also need to set it up where if we're gonna hire, we're not hiring all of them. And that's what we do.
I did it, so I'm looking for the human resources game plan. My line up, where this plan kicks off on October. Kicks off, so that people really understand. When you're, at some point, you're because I'm just gonna keep going through my list of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah, I feed a dog.
Yeah.
okay.
So when I look at the department project priorities. I don't see in the department project priorities how it shows up in the budget. Therefore, I'm concerned. And I'll pick on Drew for a minute, okay? When I look at enterprise utilities, there's great stuff in here on the wastewater treatment plant. I see 0 on water.
So for water, their focus is gonna be on the left column.
Okay, I don't think he can survive on just working lead and copper this next year. When we are currently under a drought warning for the city, and how long that's going, and I'm telling you, that's the #1 complaint I get as a council member, and I get a call at least a day. Rick, when are we gonna get that fixed? So I don't think
So the engineering side, sorry. We've already started.
there is, I don't see no one. I don't see it anywhere. And again, Megan, you've worked countless hours. I'm not trying to give you a bad time. I'm just saying, where is it? It is, there are 2 top priorities we got on our list. Water, wastewater employees, and then roads. We talked about road strategy. I see the wastewater treatment plant. I don't see the water plant. So I'm trying to understand, where is it? What's the plan? Because I'm gonna go back to a budget. But when I was on council before, 2018, 2019, and I was having to pull this tab out. We actually had measures that water gallons pumped, the goal was 760 million gallons, which is 2 million gallons a day. Gallons billed 1.9 million gallons, water leaks repaired 250, backups repaired 100, average time to complete 2 days. Water new service was 50, wastewater new service was 50, wastewater gallon produced 325 million gallons of fluid water delivered, 250 million gallons, total training hours 520, and training hours for 44.
So we're looking at a 250-page budget.
No, he's looking at
That's
that.
the budget in 2018.
I know,
The
but if we
paying
start
council-
adding all of that,
Okay, so, but if
I think with the deadline you gave Megan, We got it pretty good.
I
I think that all of this can be worked out. But I don't think we should go back to 2019. I want to be on a council that's gonna go forward. Not that. I'm not in disagreement with what you're asking to put in. So let me finish. I'm not in disagreement. That probably does need to be in there. It sounds wonderful. This can, maybe can work this out. We don't have to treat her like she's 12. It'll get done. That's just my opinion.
So I heard early on, this budget, this council's never approved a budget with these records before. I'm here to tell you this council,
I'm not saying we did. I'm just saying
I
that
heard
we,
that
I'm sure
early
he put in.
and so I'm
Ada
asking,
was here in 2019.
I know, and she was the director of finance. And city manager put this together.
That would be a question I would have, is that's exactly where I think we're trying to get, but we can't do it with the software reporting or stuff like that, so. How do we actually provide those resources to the employees so that we can make this?
We're in total alignment. That's why I'm asking the question. So for example, if I look at the capital, and I'll just use the start. 1.0. Let's look at the administration and resources, which is 4 new computers, education training. Updating areas, establish core values for the city of develop restructuring, develop a comprehensive active retirement package. What I don't see is here is the total. Yet it's in the capital improvement plan of $100,000 per year for 5 years.
So under finance,
That's
it
cheap.
is under their software, but we have to sit down that ERP. before we start.
It's not in the budget.
But it wouldn't be, don't even know what the cost is, right? Or where we even want to start.
Okay, we're gonna pick up here, mark your pages, not adjourning this meeting.